The message arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning, transmitted through the quantum communications array humanity had only recently learned to operate. Grand Admiral Sila Patel stood in the United Earth Defense Command Center, her dark eyes fixed on the holographic display as the alien transmission resolved itself into clear text and imagery. To the species known as humanity, the message began: "We, the collective of allied worlds, face an unprecedented crisis and require your assistance." Patel exchanged glances with Dr. James Chen, Earth's foremost xenodiplomat. In the 3 years since humanity had joined the galactic community, this was the first time any species had explicitly asked for help. Usually, they just wanted to trade technology or establish diplomatic relations. The message continued, displaying visuals of massive ships with organic-looking hulls devastating colonial worlds. "The Nexus swarm has breached our outer defense perimeter. Traditional diplomatic approaches have failed. Conventional military responses have proven insufficient. We require alternative solutions." "They're desperate," Chen observed, his fingers dancing over his datapad as he analyzed the cultural markers in the transmission. "The collective never admits weakness. For them to openly request help, what makes them think we can succeed where they failed?" Patel questioned, though she already suspected the answer. The collective had been watching humanity closely since first contact, particularly their military exercises and conflict resolution strategies. The holographic display shifted, showing footage of Earth's various military operations, not just the victories, but the messier aspects: urban warfare simulations, hostage rescue operations, and most tellingly, the aftermath of conflict resolution. "Your species possesses a unique quality," the message continued. "You understand violence intimately, yet choose peace. You prepare for war while striving for diplomatic solutions. The swarm cannot be reasoned with through traditional means, but perhaps your species' distinctive approach might succeed where our pure diplomacy or pure military solutions have failed." Patel activated the tactical display, bringing up everything they knew about the Nexus swarm. The creatures were essentially a hive mind of organic ships, consuming resources and expanding endlessly. Previous attempts at communication had failed. The swarm operated on such alien principles that even the collective's advanced translation matrices couldn't establish meaningful dialogue. "They're not just asking for military help," Chen realized, his eyes widening. "They're asking us to do what humanity does best: find a third option." Patel nodded slowly. Throughout human history, their greatest achievements often came not from choosing between two bad options, but from refusing to accept the limitations of the choice itself. Where others saw only war or submission, humans had often crafted unexpected alternatives. "Tell the Security Council I need an emergency session," Patel ordered her aide. "And get me everything we have on hive mind psychology. If we're going to help the collective, we're going to do it our way." As the command center burst into activity, Patel couldn't help but feel a grim sort of satisfaction. The galaxy had initially viewed humanity as primitive, barely worthy of notice. Now they were reaching out in their hour of need, not despite humanity's complicated relationship with conflict, but because of it. The next few hours would determine not just the fate of the collective, but humanity's place in the galaxy. And Admiral Sila Patel intended to show them exactly why you should never underestimate humanity's capacity for finding innovative solutions to impossible problems. The United Earth Security Council chamber hummed with tension as holographic displays showed the advancing Nexus swarm's path of destruction. Admiral Patel stood at the center, surrounded by the world's top military strategists, xenobiologists, and diplomatic experts. "The collective's military forces are technologically superior to ours in almost every way," Patel began, manipulating the holographic display to show comparison statistics. "Yet they're losing. Their rigid tactical doctrine and purely military approach has failed to adapt to the swarm's organic nature." Dr. Maya Rodriguez, Earth's leading xenobiologist, stepped forward. Her weathered face reflected decades spent studying alien life forms. The swarm isn't just a military force. It's a superorganism. We've been analyzing its behavior patterns, and something doesn't add up. Look at this. The display shifted to show the swarm's expansion patterns. Rodriguez highlighted several anomalies. They're not just consuming resources randomly. There's a pattern here that suggests intelligence, perhaps even culture. The collective has been treating them like mindless destroyers, but I believe there's something far more complex. Are you suggesting we try to communicate with them? General John Way asked, his cybernetic eye whirring as it focused on the data. The collective already tried that. The collective tried to communicate using their standard protocols. Dr. Chen interjected. But they approach diplomacy the same way they approach everything else, with rigid, predetermined methods. We humans have experience dealing with truly alien mindsets. Our history is full of moments where we had to find ways to understand and communicate with those who think fundamentally differently from us. Patel nodded, bringing up new tactical displays. This is where our hybrid approach comes in. We're going to launch what we're calling Operation Bridge, a combined military-diplomatic mission that plays to humanity's unique strengths. The plan took shape on the holographic display, a fleet of Earth's most advanced ships, equipped not just with weapons, but with specialized communication arrays and biological research facilities. The ship's designs incorporated elements of both military efficiency and scientific exploration. The key is to approach this like humans always have, Patel continued. We prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. Our ships will be ready for combat, but their primary mission will be to establish understanding. We'll deploy special forces trained in both combat and first contact protocols, scientists working alongside soldiers, diplomats backed by firepower. And if we can't communicate with them? Someone asked from the back of the room. Then we fall back on another human specialty, Patel replied grimly. Innovation under pressure. We've already begun analyzing the swarm's biological nature for potential vulnerabilities. Not to destroy them, but to contain them if necessary. The collective sees only two options, victory or annihilation. We see a spectrum of possibilities. Dr. Rodriguez brought up new data streams. We've also been studying the regions the swarm avoids. There are patterns there too, suggesting there might be environmental factors they naturally shy away from. If communication fails, we might be able to establish buffer zones, create boundaries they won't want to cross. The room erupted in discussion as humanity's best and brightest began doing what they did best, finding creative solutions to seemingly impossible problems. Ideas flew back and forth. Proposals for new types of shielding based on the swarm's avoidance patterns, communication attempts based on chemical signatures rather than traditional signals, tactical maneuvers that would herd rather than destroy. This is why the collective came to us. Chen observed quietly to Patel. They've spent millennia perfecting their civilization, becoming more advanced, more organized, more specialized. But in doing so, they lost something we humans never did. The ability to think outside established parameters, to find third options where others see only two. Patel watched as the plans took shape, a strange hybrid of military operation and peaceful outreach that could only have come from the human mind. Send word to the collective, she ordered. Tell them we accept their request for aid, but we'll do this our way. They asked for heroes. We're going to show them something better. We're going to show them innovators. As the message was transmitted, preparation orders began flowing out to bases around the world. Humanity was about to demonstrate to the galaxy that true strength lies not in choosing between war and peace, but in having the wisdom and creativity to find unexpected paths to resolution. The UES Prometheus hung in the void at the edge of swarm-controlled space, its hybrid design unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Captain Sarah Chen, no relation to the xenodiplomat, stood on the bridge, watching as her crew made final preparations for humanity's first major interstellar military operation. All research modules report ready, Lieutenant Park announced from his station. Biological sensors are at maximum sensitivity. Communication arrays are primed for multi-spectrum transmission. The ship itself represented humanity's innovative approach. While the collective's vessels were purely military or purely scientific, the Prometheus merged both. Research labs sat alongside weapon systems. Diplomatic facilities were protected by state-of-the-art shields. It was a ship built not just for war or peace, but for finding the complex middle ground between them. Swarm elements detected. The sensor officer reported. 3 biomechanical vessels, approaching on an intercept course. Chen nodded, her expression calm despite the tension coursing through the bridge. Deploy the research drones. Begin broadcasting on all frequencies, including the new chemical signature array Dr. Rodriguez developed. The drones, small autonomous units designed to gather data while presenting minimal threat, spread out in a careful pattern. Unlike the collective's aggressive probe tactics, these maintained a respectful distance, gathering data while simultaneously transmitting peace signals through multiple mediums. "Captain," Park called out, excitement in his voice, "we're detecting changes in the swarm ship's biological signatures. They're responding to our chemical transmissions." The massive organic ships had slowed their approach, their surfaces rippling with bioluminescent patterns. Dr. Rodriguez, watching from her station in the research module, was already analyzing the data. "Those patterns," she breathed, "they're not random. This is communication, but not like anything we've seen before. The swarm doesn't think in terms of language or even conventional signals. They communicate through biological state changes." Chen made a quick decision. "Deploy the adaptation protocols. Let's show them we can speak their language." Special canisters launched from the Prometheus, releasing carefully engineered biological markers into space. The markers, based on the swarm's own biological signatures, but modified to carry human messages, dispersed in elegant patterns. The response was immediate. The swarm ship's bioluminescent displays intensified, and their movement patterns shifted from aggressive to what the xenobiologists identified as curious. "They're responding to our biological signals," Rodriguez reported. "The patterns suggest interest. They've never encountered a species that could communicate on their level before." But the situation wasn't entirely peaceful. Even as the chemical dialogue continued, the swarm ships maintained attack positions. They were willing to communicate, but they weren't yet willing to trust. "That's fine," Chen murmured. "We understand that balance." She ordered a subtle shift in the Prometheus's position, maintaining defensive readiness while continuing the biological dialogue. It was a very human message. We're willing to talk, but we're also prepared to defend ourselves. The next few hours were intense but productive. Through careful manipulation of biological signals and ship movements, they began establishing basic communication protocols. The swarm, they discovered, didn't think in terms of words or even concrete concepts. They thought in patterns of growth and adaptation. "That's why they consume resources," Rodriguez realized, excitement in her voice. "It's not aggression. It's their way of understanding and incorporating new information into their collective consciousness. They're not trying to destroy. They're trying to learn." Chen saw the tactical implications immediately. So when the collective responded with pure military force, the swarm interpreted it as a pattern of aggression to be countered with their own pattern of expansion. Rodriguez finished. "They've been locked in an escalating cycle of misunderstanding." Chen opened a channel to Earth Command. "Admiral Patel, we've made first contact and established preliminary communication. But more importantly, we think we've identified the root of the conflict. The swarm isn't inherently hostile. They're curious in a way we never expected. They're trying to learn about the galaxy the only way they know how." As the implications sank in, Chen couldn't help but smile. Once again, humanity's ability to think differently, to see beyond conventional approaches, had opened up new possibilities. They hadn't just found a way to fight or talk to the swarm. They'd found a way to understand them. "Begin Phase 2, she ordered. "Let's show them there are better ways to learn about the galaxy than consuming it." Admiral Patel stood before the emergency session of the Collective Council, her holographic form projected into their grand chamber. Behind her, dynamic displays showed the Prometheus's successful first contact with the swarm, along with the groundbreaking data they'd gathered. Distinguished representatives, she began, we've discovered that this conflict stems from a fundamental misunderstanding. The swarm isn't a mindless aggressor. They're an intelligent species with a completely alien way of learning and understanding. The chamber erupted in multilingual chaos. The collective's representatives, each from civilizations that had lost worlds to the swarm, struggled to accept this perspective. They've destroyed entire colonies. Ambassador Excelfor of the Meridian Worlds protested, their crystalline form flickering with agitation. Because that's how they learn, Paddle responded calmly. They understand by incorporating, by becoming. But we've demonstrated another way. She gestured, and the displays showed the innovative biological communication system the Prometheus had developed. Our scientists have created what we call knowledge markers, biological packages that can convey information in a way the swarm can absorb without destruction. Think of it as a library they can read without consuming the books. Meanwhile, at the front lines, Captain Chen was overseeing the deployment of the first large-scale knowledge marker network. The Prometheus, along with its sister ships now arrived from Earth, had positioned themselves in a careful pattern around a contested star system. Release the marker, boys, Chen ordered. The new devices rushed into production after their breakthrough, deployed in a precise geometric pattern. Each began releasing carefully engineered biological signals, essentially a peaceful library of information about galactic civilization. The swarm's response exceeded their most optimistic predictions. The massive bioships approached the marker network with what the xenobiologists now recognized as excitement. Their surfaces rippled with patterns of learning and integration as they absorbed the offered information without consuming the physical infrastructure. Back in the Collective Council chamber, Paddle continued her presentation. But understanding alone isn't enough. We need to establish boundaries the swarm will respect. That's where the second phase of our plan comes in. The displays shifted to show new technological schematics. We've developed what we call pattern barriers, devices that emit biological and electromagnetic signatures the swarm naturally avoids. Not harmful, not threatening, but creating clear boundaries they'll choose not to cross. This is unprecedented. Ambassador Lyra of the Arcturian sphere observed, their energy form pulsing with interest. You're not trying to force them to stop. You're giving them a reason to choose a different path. Exactly, Paddle smiled. Humanity has learned through our own history that lasting peace comes not from forcing compliance, but from creating conditions where peace is the most attractive option. The tactical displays now showed the pattern barriers being established around populated systems. The swarm, rather than attempting to break through, began adjusting their movement patterns to flow around these areas, focusing instead on the knowledge marker networks that offered them the information they craved without destruction. But what guarantees do we have? Selthor demanded. What prevents them from reverting to their destructive patterns? The same thing that prevents most intelligent species from choosing conflict when better options exist, Paddle responded. We're not just giving them boundaries, we're giving them an alternative that better serves their actual goals. They don't want to destroy. They want to learn. We're simply showing them a more efficient way to do so. On the Prometheus, Chen watched as the first real-time data came in from the pattern barrier network. The swarm was already establishing new movement patterns, creating natural flows around protected systems, while eagerly engaging with the knowledge marker networks. It's working better than we anticipated, Dr. Rodriguez observed, reviewing the biological feedback data. They're not just accepting the new system. They're actively adapting to optimize their interaction with it. They're learning to learn differently. Chen nodded, sending updated reports to Earth Command. Humanity had done what the collective thought impossible, not by choosing between war and submission, but by understanding the root of the conflict and creating a third option that served everyone's interests. "Begin deploying Phase 3, she ordered. "Let's show them there's even more to learn through cooperation than consumption." The Prometheus's crew worked with renewed energy, knowing they were part of something unprecedented, not just resolving a conflict, but fundamentally changing how two alien civilizations understood each other. It was, Chen reflected, perhaps the most human solution possible, creative, adaptive, and built on the belief that understanding could overcome any obstacle. 6 months after the implementation of Operation Bridge, the Grand Chamber of the Collective Council witnessed something unprecedented. Alongside the usual representatives of member species, a new form of attendance had been arranged. A specially designed biological interface that allowed the swarm to participate in council proceedings. Admiral Patul stood at the center of the chamber, presenting the final results of humanity's intervention. The holographic displays around her showed transformed star maps, former conflict zones now converted into thriving regions of cultural and scientific exchange. "The pattern barrier network is now fully operational," she reported, highlighting the elaborate system of boundaries and knowledge markers that had reshaped galactic space. The swarm has not only respected these boundaries, but has actively helped maintain them. They've discovered that selective learning through our knowledge marker network is far more efficient than their previous method of consumption. The swarm's representative pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that the new translation matrices interpreted as agreement and satisfaction. Their method of participation, a biomechanical interface that allowed them to communicate through controlled pattern changes, was itself a testament to the success of human innovation. But the most significant development, Patul continued, has been the unexpected synergy between swarm biology and collective technology. The displays shifted to show new hybrid installations sprouting up along the former conflict zones, research centers where swarm biological expertise merged with collective engineering. Dr. Rodriguez, now heading the Joint Species Research Initiative, stepped forward to explain. The swarm's ability to process and integrate biological information has revolutionized our understanding of organic computing. In return, our knowledge marker network has given them access to millennia of accumulated galactic knowledge. It's a partnership that benefits everyone. The chamber's atmosphere was charged with a new kind of energy, not the tension of recent months, but the excitement of possibility. Species that had once been mortal enemies were now engaged in unprecedented collaboration. Humanity's contribution goes beyond merely resolving the conflict, Ambassador Lyra observed, their energy form shimmering with what had been recognized as their version of admiration. "You've introduced a new paradigm for galactic problem-solving." The displays showed multiple examples of this new approach in action. Former collective military vessels were being retrofitted with biological interfaces, creating new hybrid ships that could better interact with swarm space. Swarm entities were voluntarily participating in controlled information exchanges, their natural desire to learn now channeled into constructive pathways. "We call it adaptive integration," Patul explained. "Instead of forcing parties to change their nature, we create systems that allow different natures to coexist and complement each other." The swarm's interface pulsed with complex patterns that the translators rendered as philosophical inquiry. Your species' ability to understand without becoming, to adapt without losing identity, to find paths between extremes. This is unique in our experience. Captain Chen, watching from the Prometheus, where she coordinated the ongoing implementation of the network, couldn't help but smile at the irony. Humanity, once considered barely worth noticing by the collective, had ended up teaching both them and the swarm a fundamental lesson about the nature of progress. The true test of intelligence, she transmitted to the chamber, isn't in choosing between existing options, but in creating new ones. Humanity's greatest strength isn't in our technology or our military might. It's in our ability to see possibilities where others see only obstacles. As the council session concluded, the chamber's displays showed the latest data from the knowledge marker network. The swarm's learning patterns had evolved, becoming more sophisticated while remaining non-destructive. The collective's rigid protocols had softened, incorporating more flexible, adaptive approaches. and humanity, true to form, was already working on new innovations to further improve the system. We were called upon to be heroes, Paddle reflected in her closing remarks. But we chose instead to be innovators. In doing so, we've helped create something far more valuable than a military victory. We've created a framework for genuine cooperation between fundamentally different forms of life. The swarm's final transmission of the session was perhaps the most profound. A pattern that translated roughly as, "You have taught us that understanding does not require consumption, that strength does not require destruction, and that difference does not require conflict." We have learned a new way of learning. As the chamber emptied, the displays continued to show the transformed galaxy, a space where biological and mechanical, rigid and fluid, individual and collective had found ways to coexist and thrive. It was, perhaps, the most human legacy possible. Not the triumph of one way of being over another, but the creation of a space where all ways could find their place.